was 1 week ago in this very segment. I'm like, so Bill Belichick in North Carolina, what's he going to do? Really take that job and get ready for Wake Forest? And sure enough, here we are. The answer is yes. He's now officially the UNC HC, Tom. What's the general sense of people that you text with, talk with about this wild fact, Tom?
Well, Rich, first of all, I've had a full week to rethink the phrasing that I used on the show. Based upon what I was being told at that time, I said it's highly unlikely that he's going to end up at North Carolina. And the reason that I said that, besides the fact that it is a wild idea to say Bill Belichick is going to end up at North Carolina, but they were not close on all the things in terms of the salary, the investment that would need to be made in a coaching staff, the investment that they would need to make in terms of the revenue share and everything else. Like, they were not in the same ballpark, but they got to a place over many conversations where Bill Belichick felt comfortable going into North Carolina and taking a shot at this in 2025. Now, there's still a ton of unanswered questions in terms of what is the staff going to look like for Bill Belichick. We know Mike Lombardi is already there to be the general manager of the team. They got $13 million in the revenue share, which is a big chunk when you're talking about a historically basketball school like North Carolina, but it's still less than the Clemsons of the world. So how well are they going to be able to compete from a monetary perspective? There's a lot of staffing questions that still need to be answered at this point. I think that the assumption by a lot of people was that Bill would basically get the whole band back together and they'd all be headed to North Carolina. I don't get that same sense. You may see some familiar names, but there may well be a lot of people named Belichick or Lombardi who end up being on that staff. Steve Belichick, of course, Bill's son, who's the defensive coordinator of Washington. He's got a buyout that's in place through January 1st. Washington still has a bowl game coming up. So if, in fact, Steve Belichick is going to end up in North Carolina, which nothing's done on that front, but I would say, based on my understanding, I think that it's more likely than not that he ends up there. That's something that's going to be a few weeks away. But Belichick is still, doing meetings and figuring out who's going to come in and help him with, the scouting side of things, both at the college and the high school level. Who's going to fill out some of those important spots on the rest of his coaching staff? I think the other, interesting part of this is the way, and other people have pointed this out, the way that the buyouts in Bill's contract are structured, because there's a $10 million buyout in place through June 1st of 2025. That's clearly there to reduce, never say eliminate, but reduce substantially the possibility that the NFL cycle picks up in a month here and somebody whisks Bill away, even though he says, I didn't come here to leave. The $10 million buyout at least goes a little ways toward preventing that, even though Bill was making $25 million a year by the end of New England. He's probably got plenty of money to do whatever he wants to here. That buyout drops to $1 million starting next June 1st, which clearly keeps Bill's options open for what he wants to do if the NFL comes knocking again next year. Why did he decide to jump on this job when his focus and a lot of the conversation for the past year had been about staying in the NFL and going after the wins record? A lot of it, Rich, from my understanding, goes back to the way that things played out last year when there were, I think, 7 jobs open. Only one of those teams, the Falcons, was even willing to interview Belichick for the job. He has the initial conversation with Arthur Blank on his yacht. He thinks at that point, everybody seems to be on the same page. But then based on the rules that the NFL has in place and all the things they do for diversity and equity, it was, Bill, you got to come in. You got to go through the same car wash at the facility that we're doing with 15 other people. So Bill Belichick, who shouldn't need to type up a resume, much less go through a 10-hour interview, has to go through and meet with all these different people and then wait while they're doing additional interviews. And Belichick, up until the day that the Falcons hired Raheem Morris, still believed he was going to be the Falcons head coach. There was a part of that I think scarred Bill on some level. He had to think about why, that played out the way that it did. And I never got the sense that he really felt great about going through this same process and, again, having to do the same things and waiting and going through as teams satisfied the Rooney Rule and as they talk to various candidates. The league encourages everybody to drag these processes out. I don't think that he really felt like he wanted to do that. As opposed at the college level, they just go, we want that guy. We want Bill Belichick. And it was really the donors and the boosters, from my understanding, who got this thing rolling. There were some people that Bill has known for a long time at North Carolina. They came to him about it. He was intrigued enough to have those initial conversations. And it progressed to a point where he's sitting there wearing Carolina blue and smiling 500% more in a press conference than he ever did in New England. And we'll see exactly what that means in terms of what they put on the field in 2025. And in turn, does that set up Bill for a 2, 3, 4-year runway at North Carolina? Or does it propel him right back into potentially being in the conversation in the next NFL hiring cycle in 2026?
Tom Pelissero, you just gave a ton of information there. But the one thing I actually turned to Brockman and TJ here in the studio going, wait a minute. Bill was making $25 million a year coaching the Patriots by the end of his contract there, Tom? Really?
Bill's contract was always somewhat of a mystery during his time in New England because he would never leak it. The Patriots would never leak it. It was thought for the last decade that Bill was the highest paid coach somewhere in that upper stratosphere. I mean, there's a bunch of coaches now, Rich. There's about a half dozen coaches who are making 17 to 22 million. Bill, from my understanding, what I heard, and Bill has not confirmed this directly to me, so I'll add that grain of salt. But my understanding was the last deal he did was 2 years and $50 million with the Patriots. When they redid his contract, it was essentially a 1-year deal and then sort of a parachute for him. They obviously parted ways last year. He's making now $10 million at North Carolina. He's got all kinds of incentives, for things like the academics and the GPA, Rich, which again, when I'm reading the whole contract was just hilarious. It's like, so Bill's sitting there going, boy, guys, if we can get a 2.8 GPA, I get an extra 200 grand. It's just, it's a strange thought. He's a great football coach. But for, all the comparisons to Deion Sanders, and I've heard plenty of those, but remember this, Deion became instantly, Colorado became this national story. It's going to be the same thing at North Carolina. Deion went 4-8. His first year with 2 of the best players in the country on his team. Bill doesn't have those guys coming in. Let's see who he's able to add. You can be the greatest coach at the college level, even in the ACC. It's still about what's the talent level that you put on the field, and we'll see how him and Mike Lombardi decide to deploy those resources.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.